very important article reporting from Israel by Wall Street Journal reporter David Cloud called "When Hamas Attacked, This Israeli Kibbutz Fought Back and Won." This is a big deal because this really justifies the Second Amendment here in the United States, because it shows that when you actually let civilians have firearms and train and be ready to go when the need arises, success can be at hand. Stay tuned. You're not going to want to miss this amazing story from the Wall Street Journal about Israel. Hey folks, I'm Mark Smith, host of the Four Box of Nine, a proud American gun owner, constitutional attorney, member of the U.S. Supreme Court Bar, and author of Disarmed: What the Ukraine War Teaches Americans About the Right to Keep and Bear Arms. Obviously an important lesson, as you'll see in just a minute, for the Israelis. All right, an amazing story in the Wall Street Journal today with huge ramifications and lessons for American gun owners and American politics as I see it. Specifically, as we've talked about in other videos, we know that the Israeli government obviously failed, unfortunately, to protect its citizens fully from the Hamas attack. Because as we know from the Hamas attack, terrorist attack, there was something like 1,200 Israelis, I think it was 1,400 Israelis were killed, and approximately 200 or more were kidnapped by the Hamas terrorists that invaded or attacked Israel. Obviously, the purpose of the Israeli government, or any government, is to protect its citizens. That obviously did not occur, which should not be a shock to anybody, because we all understand that no matter how good government is, or how hard they work, the reality is that they can't be everywhere always, and they can't protect everyone all the time, which is why, in my view, and the Second Amendment's view, and the Founding Fathers' view, you have the right to keep your arms to protect yourself in those times when government can't protect you. Now, an amazing story in the Wall Street Journal really illustrates what can occur if you allow armed citizens to exist and allow them to train. This story takes place in a town, at a kibbutz in a town called Methelsim, and I'll put a link to this article down below. Specifically, there was a group of 12 individuals. Some, if not all, had military training. In fact, I think all Israeli citizens have a duty to serve in the military. And they did indeed do so. And there was a particular individual who was a soldier who was responsible for the security of this kibbutz. And when the Hamas attacked, he immediately called out by his WhatsApp and also by walkie-talkie to the various members of his dozen-man force to defend the kibbutz. Now, I should tell you the outcome before we get into the details. The outcome of having these 12 individuals trained with access to firearms of their own was that, according to the Wall Street Journal, quote, no Methelsim residents were killed or taken hostage, protected by a dozen residents, many of them former Israeli soldiers who had prepared for years to defend the kibbutz. Wall Street Journal. Sound familiar? Does this sound like a modern-day militia? Modern-day home guard? Modern-day home defense? Modern-day neighborhood watch? Whatever you want to call it. It certainly sounds like something like that. We have a group of individuals coming together, training, being ready to go, and in that time of need, whenever it occurs, they're able to step up and protect their communities. And a tremendous outcome here, because not a single member of the kibbutz was captured or killed. And that was not just luck, because apparently at one point during this attack, there was a whole group of members of the kibbutz that had been rounded up and were ready to be taken hostage by the militant Hamas members. And the 12-member force, security force of the kibbutz, stepped up and fired at the militants and was able to drive them away and save those individuals from being captured and held hostage. A huge win. Now, apparently, according to the Wall Street Journal report, again, I'll put a link to it down below, there's approximately 25 militants had attacked this kibbutz, the goal being to take hostages, Specifically, they were supposed to herd the hostages in this one kibbutz into the community dining hall center and then figure out what to do next. But they never got that because at 6:56 a.m. local time on October 7th, Moshe Kaplan, who was responsible for this, noticed what was going on. He sent an urgent alert to his volunteer security force in the kibbutz saying that, hey, we're under attack. By the way, there was 1,000 people, 1,000 men, women, and children in this kibbutz in southern Israel. And again, none of them were killed and none of them were taken hostage, all because of proper training. Now, I should say that Moshe Kaplan rushed home to grab his armored vest, helmet, and M16 rifle. I'm going to try to find out if I can get more information whether or not it was an M16 rifle, because as a general matter, Israelis are not allowed to have rifles in their homes. There are maybe some exceptions for somebody associated with the military security forces. Again, I'm going to try to get to the bottom of this. Nevertheless, he had an M16 rifle, as did others, and frankly, an armored vest. And he did indeed fire with his colleagues. He shot the terrorists. They warned everyone there's terrorists in the kibbutz. They took the wife, the women, and the children, and those that could not defend themselves. They put them into safe rooms and put them into safe homes, apparently, and told them, do not come out no matter what happens. And they fought to save the lives of this. Now, what's interesting, though, is that initially, according to the Wall Street Journal article, this security force of volunteers, they believed that all they needed to do was to hold off the insurgents just long enough for the Israeli army to arrive. But guess what? The Israeli army did not show up. They were waiting for the tanks. In fact, there was some discussion by a gentleman, Yarden Reskin, a 38-year-old landscape architect who was part of this, who was one of the security volunteers. He was saying, "Where are the tanks? Where are the tanks?" But guess what? The Israeli tanks weren't coming, at least not in any kind of timely fashion. Again, that should not be a shock, because as we know here in the United States, when it comes to police officers, and this is not to knock them, it's just the reality on the ground, when seconds count, police are minutes away. And it turns out, even in a heavily security state-oriented Israel, with Mossad and intelligence communities and a powerful IDF and excellent special forces and so on, even in Israel, close to the border of Gaza, which is really a quasi-war zone, and everyone knows there's dangers in and around that area, even in that environment, the government was not able to step up and protect these people. That's why there's 1,400 Israelis that have been killed, and a few hundred of them, if maybe even more, have been taken hostage by these terrorists that have attacked Israel. Now, I'm not going to break down the defense of the kibbutz here in detail, because the Wall Street Journal breaks it down with maps showing where people were at different times and the time stamps as to when people were doing what. But it's obviously a fantastic outcome that you had this volunteer security force with access to firearms, not dependent upon the government, that was able to protect their fellow members, 1,000 members, 1,000 men, women, and children that were in this kibbutz, and none of them were harmed. An incredible outcome and proof positive of the proof of concept that small arms in the hands of committed volunteers and armed citizens can do great good in the world. So when Joe Biden says you need an F-16, you need all this fancy stuff and tanks to win a modern conflict, well, maybe he should pick up the phone and call Moshe Kaplan in Israel and have Mr. Kaplan explain how he and his fellow dozen security forces, volunteers with guns, were able to thwart and save the lives of the members of their kibbutz community in a way that the other aspects in the other parts of Israel, unfortunately, were not so lucky or not so successful, because they, unfortunately, did not have the benefit of government forces to protect them, nor did they have the ability to access firearms to protect themselves. A terrible outcome in those other parts of Israel. A lot more to the story, but we're going to cover this in detail as we keep moving forward. But again, this is a clear example of the importance of armed citizens and the good they can bring to the world. And thank God in America we have the right to keep arms, and we have armed citizenry to protect all of us from tyranny in all of its form. Whether it be terrorist attack, foreign invasion, street criminals, domestic terrorist group, a tyrannical government, events associated with natural disasters, or even animal attacks. Early Chief Justice Joseph Story pointed out all those are important reasons why we have armed citizens and the right to keep and bear arms under our Second Amendment. All right, folks, hope you learned a little bit something here today. If you haven't subscribed to the Four Boxes Diner, please do so. Make sure you follow me on X at Four Boxes Diner, and we'll see you again soon at the Four Boxes Diner.
Orders up. Table 2A.